Ever feel like, the news is like just hitting you over the head constantly? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pushing you to think a certain way. It's like we're all stuck in these echo chambers, just hearing the same thing over and over again. And that's exactly why we do this show, The Deep Dive. We take a step back, look at the big stories from yesterday, April 6th, 2025, and really try to understand what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. It's about getting a more, well-rounded view, not just reacting to the immediate headlines. We're looking at all sorts of sources, different angles to get a better grasp of what happened and why it actually matters. We're not here to tell you what to think. We just want to connect the dots, whether it's national, international, even sports, and encourage you to see how different outlets are framing these same events.
Exactly. It's all about giving you the facts, the information, so you can make your own decisions. Yesterday was a busy one. Let's start with the severe weather. That really hit the South and Midwest hard. That was huge.
Yeah, definitely a top story everywhere. Devastating storms, over 90 tornadoes reported. The flooding was just massive, and tragically, at least 18 deaths across the affected states.
It's hard to even picture that many tornadoes. We saw those images, just awful, from places like Dawson Springs, Kentucky, and Hardy, Arkansas. I mean, homes just ripped apart, roads and bridges washed away. It's a reminder of how powerful nature can be.
And the rain, relentless rain, just made it so much worse. Memphis had its wettest April day ever on record. And now the worry is, with the rivers rising, a flooding could last for a while, prolonging the hardship for so many people.
And it wasn't just like one small area. There were tornado watches issued for parts of Alabama, Georgia, Florida even, it's being called a once-in-a-generation storm. And the length of it, the duration, really shows you just how big this thing was. It's hard not to think about the impact, how lives are changed just like that.
Absolutely. It's these kind of events where getting a clear picture without all the noise and spin becomes even more crucial. All right, let's switch gears completely. How about some good news for a change, some sports? The Yukon Huskies, they did it again.
Yeah. The women's basketball team, they clinched their 12th national championship, and it was a nail-biter. It was against South Carolina, another powerhouse team, a rematch of the 2022 final. Yeah. Talk about a clash of the Titans.
And the stories around some of the players, really interesting. Paige Buchers, she's been a star, but this was her first championship, a senior, so there was that whole narrative. And then Azzi Fudd and the freshman, Sarah Strong, they both put up 24 points each. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And now, with this win, UConn has the most championships, men's or women's, in college basketball history.
Yeah.
That's a dynasty right there.
Yeah.
It's good to see those moments of celebration, even when there's so much serious news happening. And speaking of basketball, we've got the men's final coming up, Florida versus Houston.
Right. Always something going on. Okay, let's move on to something that's been causing a stir, particularly in the financial world. President Trump and his new tariffs. This is a big one.
All right, let's break this down carefully. This came after what's being called the worst week for Wall Street since the pandemic. So the economic impact, that's what everyone's talking about. So these tariffs, they're calling them baseline minimum 10% tariffs on goods from any country trading with the U.S. And there's talk of even higher reciprocal tariffs coming later.
The White House is really pushing back, defending these tariffs. They're saying, look, this is how we make America economically strong, and it gives us leverage in trade talks. They've even said over 50 countries have reached out to start negotiations.
But there's a lot of worry out there too, right? People are talking about a potential recession, and for the average person, it's the possibility of prices going up on everything: groceries, furniture, electronics, cars, you name it. And everyone's worried about their 401ks.
It's a real clash of opinions on the economic front. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he's downplaying the recession fears. He's saying, look, this is just a one-time price adjustment, and we've got oil prices and interest rates going down. That'll soften the blow.
But then you have others really pushing back hard. Former Vice President Mike Pence, he's calling these tariffs the largest peacetime tax hike ever. And Senator Ted Cruz is saying the same thing. Basically, this is a tax on consumers.
And the global markets are definitely reacting. Stock prices, U.S. futures, they're all down. And our trading partners are saying, well, can we even negotiate with these new tariffs in place? It's really interesting to think about the implications for, global trade. If these tariffs stay, companies might start looking to manufacture things outside of those big trading partners. And that could change things in a big way, going way beyond just prices at the store.
China's response has been pretty noteworthy, too. They're saying they're still going to be open for business, a place for foreign investment. But they're also accusing the U.S. of acting unilaterally. It feels like we're headed into some choppy waters, economically speaking. It makes you wonder, what's the long game here? What are the real long-term effects of a change like this?
Yeah.
Understanding these different viewpoints, that's crucial, especially when it comes to something that could affect so many people.
Couldn't agree more. It's all about looking past those initial reactions and thinking about the bigger picture, the ripple effects. Okay, let's switch gears again. There is a serious public health issue that we need to discuss, the measles outbreak in West Texas.
It's a tough one. There's been a second child's death reported now, and it's being called the worst measles outbreak in Texas in 30 years, 3 decades. The number of cases getting close to 500, and there are hospitalizations.
Mm.
And it's clear that the unvaccinated children, they're the most vulnerable. The U.S., we've been considered to have eliminated measles, which means it's not constantly around, and outbreaks are contained quickly. But if we lose that status, it means the virus is more widespread, and that's a big deal.
And then you have Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He made a surprise visit to West Texas, and this is someone who's been openly critical of vaccines in the past. So that's added a whole other layer to this story, and it's understandably raising concerns among public health officials who are working to contain the outbreak. It really makes you think, with Secretary Kennedy Jr.'s views, how does that affect how people see the outbreak and the importance of vaccination, especially in that area?
That's a really important point. It shows you the challenges public health officials face when you have these prominent figures saying something different. And the wider implications, they're pretty serious. There's worry that the U.S. could lose that elimination status for measles, and that would be a big setback, potentially affecting disease control for a long time.
You're right. It really underlines how important it is to understand those public health recommendations and what happens when vaccination rates drop, especially in communities that are already vulnerable.
Okay, let's move on to another issue that's been generating a lot of controversy, the Trump administration, and reports that they're revoking visas for international students.
Yeah, there's a lot of anxiety on college campuses right now because of this. We're hearing about the administration revoking visas, and sometimes with very little notice, affecting students in lots of different states. And the reasons behind these revocations, it seems like there are a few different things going on. Some cases seem to be connected to pro-Palestinian activism at universities, while others are linked to South Sudan, apparently because they're not taking back their citizens.
And we're seeing specific examples that really highlight the human cost. There's a report about a Duke University basketball player. His visa is now in question. And then there's the case of a Fulbright scholar at Tufts. She was detained, accused of supporting Hamas because she co-authored a pro-Palestinian op-ed. And a Columbia University graduate, he was detained too. He's a well-known pro-Palestinian protester, and his green card was revoked. It makes you wonder, is revoking visas because of political views, even if those views are critical of U.S. allies, is that stifling free speech and academic freedom?
That's a huge question. These actions raise a lot of questions about balancing national security with fundamental rights, like freedom of expression, academic freedom. And there's another layer to this. 2 top immigration attorneys at the DOJ, they were put on leave after a judge ordered the return of a man who was wrongly deported to El Salvador. That adds another layer of complexity and makes you wonder about due process in the immigration system.
It really shows you how these immigration policies affect people's lives, how much disruption they can cause. And speaking of wrongful deportations, there's the case of Armando Abrego Garcia.
Right, that one got a lot of attention. A federal judge ordered the Trump administration to bring back Armando Abrego Garcia, who was deported, wrongly, to a mega prison in El Salvador. The government had a deadline to bring him back.
And what the judge said is pretty strong. They questioned the government's lack of desire to do it, not just their inability. It suggests that there's a real concern about whether the administration wants to fix these mistakes. This really highlights the need for accountability, making sure those government processes are fair.
No question about it. It reminds us that even in these systems, legal systems, law enforcement, mistakes happen, and how those mistakes are handled, that tells you a lot about the integrity of the whole system. All right, let's move on to a health story, more localized but still concerning. A rare virus linked to several deaths.
This one involved hantavirus, the same disease that tragically killed Gene Hackman's wife earlier this year. Now it's been confirmed in 3 deaths in Central California, all recent, in the Mammoth Lakes area.
The concerning part is they don't know how those individuals got infected. Hantavirus, it's usually spread through contact with rodents that are carrying the virus. So public health officials will be looking into this very closely. It's a reminder that there are all sorts of health risks out there, even if they don't always make the headlines.
Absolutely. We have to be aware, even of the less common threats. Okay, let's switch gears one more time to the world of sports. A huge accomplishment in the NHL. Alex Ovechkin made history.
A truly remarkable moment. Alex Ovechkin broke Wayne Gretzky's record, the NHL record for career goals. He scored his 895th goal. And what a great moment. Wayne Gretzky was there to congratulate him. A real show of respect for the history of the game.
That goes beyond just hockey. That's a big deal in all of sports. To break a record that people thought might never be broken, that's amazing. Those moments of, peak human performance, the dedication, it's inspiring.
It really is. And finally, we wanted to end on a positive note, an uplifting story. In our America's Strong segment, we highlight someone who exemplifies dedication and service.
This one is about George. He's an 84-year-old UPS driver in Vineland, New Jersey. He's celebrating 55 years of safe driving. Can you believe that? Over half a century, never an accident.
It's incredible. He's made over 1.7 million stops, delivered 3.6 million packages, and he was just inducted into the UPS Circle of Honor, recognizing his amazing safety record.
And what's even more inspiring is that George is happy to share his safety tips, which he says come from his time in the Marine Corps. It's like a lifetime of discipline, being dedicated to his work. These are the stories that sometimes get lost, but they're so important. Everyday people doing amazing things.
Absolutely. It's a much-needed dose of positivity, especially when so much of the news can be pretty heavy.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into yesterday's news, we hope we've given you a clearer, more complete picture of some of the most important events that happened on April 6th, 2025. We covered a lot: severe weather, championship basketball, complex economic policies, public health challenges, immigration issues, and stories that inspire us.
And we did it by looking at different sources, encouraging you to think about different perspectives, to go beyond the headlines. In a world where information overload is the norm, taking the time to really think about the facts, to see things from different angles, it's more important than ever.
Exactly. Keep being critical of the information you see, explore different viewpoints, and never stop asking questions.
And that brings us to our final thought for you to consider. In a world obsessed with the right now, what's the real value of looking back, of examining the news from yesterday? How does that help us understand the world a little bit better, maybe see things a little more clearly?